Shalom, everyone. Dr. Victoria Sarvati here with Candid Treasures. And today we're going to talk about the burden of the word of the Lord. This is an interesting phrase that is actually, you'll find in Zechariah 12. And when we understand what God is saying to us, we have to understand that some of the word of God is a burden. Some of the word of God is heavy. And it is, in our maybe mindset, very negative. But what has to happen in the end of days, in the Akhirat Hayamim, the end of the days of man's governance, before Jesus comes back to set up his kingdom and carry the burden of the government on his shoulders and teach the world his ways, at the end of the era of man's governance, there will be a lot of cataclysmic things that have to happen in the earth. In fact, it's the burden of the word of the Lord. It's something that must go on, must happen. And sometimes we as believers, when we see negative things happening on the earth, such as destruction or war or people coming against Israel or the church, we have a tendency to pray against it. We have a tendency to in our hearts and minds say this can't be right. But the reality of it is these things must come to pass. Just like when Peter and Jesus were talking, and Jesus is now, he says, now I must go to Jerusalem to be scourged and betrayed and crucified. Peter says, Lord, may it never be. And then Yeshua says, get behind me, Satan. Why would he say that to Peter? The reason he said it is because Peter was coming against what must happen. Jesus said, didn't I say these things must happen? And so we can't come against the word of the Lord. So we have to be very careful when we see things coming against Israel, when we see the nations rising up, and we see opposition and persecution that the word even explains must happen. Jesus says in Matthew 24 that all these things have to happen before the end comes. And so when we see these things happen, don't pray against it. I mean, Lord, in your timing, may these things happen. We can come against maybe the timing if that's what is in your spirit. Lord, may only this happen in your right timing. If this is not supposed to happen, then Lord, I pray that you send your angels to rebuke the enemy and put a hedge of protection around Israel or the nations or the church or whatever it may be. But we must realize there is a burden of the word of God. These things must happen and we must come into line with it. So when you pray, remember, don't be on the wrong side of prophecy. Don't be coming against the goads. Don't be in a position where Jesus says, get behind me, Satan. We have to flow with the word of God and in agreement. God bless you. Shalom.